So we're jumping back into Jarnail Singh's testimony to the Post Office inquiry, and he's discussing his handling, or otherwise, of the request from counsel and liaising with Fujitsu, and specifically getting Gareth Jenkins' witness statement and the amendments they needed making to it because of the questions that weren't answered. It also shows that the Post Office were worried about getting a flood of disclosure requests unless there were certain changes made to Gareth Jenkins' witness statement. And whilst Jarnail Singh says he can't remember a lot from the time, he does agree that if there were known errors, that should have brought an end to all the prosecutions. But how does he explain that? Let's jump into the inquiry.
Can we move forward a few days to see when you become directly involved to the 5th of February 2010, FUJ 00122713. And if we scroll down, please, can we see at the foot of the page your email to David Jones of the 5th of February at 12:34, and you say, "Dear Mr. Jones," if we carry on down the page, "I refer to our telephone conversations of 4th and 5th of February 2010 with regard to the obtaining of a witness statement of the defence challenging the reliability of Horizon. I understand that Mr. Jenkins has been identified as an experienced person to give this statement."
Well, that's kind of a bit different, isn't it? Because it seems like John Longman, on behalf of the Post Office, actually identified him and asked him directly himself, so it's not clear whether that's actually the case.
I'd be grateful, after your meeting this morning, if you could confirm to me when Mr. Jenkins would be back to return to duty after his sick leave. There's a court order with a deadline of the 8th of February. By this time, had you seen the exchanges of the 1st and 2nd of February that we'd looked at earlier?
I don't know. I mean, I can't recall as to where we are.
So just scroll down a little bit further. A bit further, please. So this doesn't appear to attach the chains that we've looked at earlier of the 1st and 2nd of February with communications from Mr. Longman into Penny Thomas. If we scroll back up to your email, it seems like you spoke with Mr. Jones on the 4th and 5th of February.
Yes.
Why had you become involved at this stage?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't recall as to. All I know that I've spoken to him, and I've asked for help, assistance with somebody who can help and assist.
I mean, I guess this is the problem, because if he's had a phone call asking that, then why is John Longman having to follow up to somebody else at Fujitsu about Gareth Jenkins' statement? This is the issue with him kind of contracting out part of his duties to somebody else and saying, let the investigator deal with it, or that's the way we've always done it. He's now dealing with it, so it's likely that things are going to fall between the cracks, because there's information that's not necessarily being seen by all parties to this conversation on both the Post Office and Fujitsu side. So it's ripe for mistakes happening.
With the prosecution.
Okay, if we scroll up, please.
That's about it. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs.
And look at Mr. Jones's reply.
Where are we?
Jarnail, thank you for your attached email, which I've now received. Looks like there's been some problem getting there. I met this morning with Gareth Jenkins, who came back into the office to meet with me. Gareth will help with this matter. His input will be coordinated by Penny, who's responsible for delivery to Post Office Limited of support in this security area. Attached is a first draft of a statement from Gareth. I'd like you to review it and indicate if it answers the question in detail you require. You'll see there are some areas where Fujitsu cannot deal with the defendant's experts' criticism, as they're about Post Office Limited procedures or requirements, and it seems evident that there will need to be a Post Office Limited internal expert who can work with Gareth to deal with these areas. One concern is that Post Office Limited have not apparently requested transaction data for West Byfleet for the period and transactions in question. This would normally be provided in previous cases and would include Fujitsu extracting log files from the system to enable us to provide details of transactions. Surprisingly, this has not been requested in this case. Perhaps you would consider the need for this. So, Mr. Jones, the head of legal within Fujitsu, is saying firstly that Mr. Jenkins is going to help you. He's enclosing a copy of Mr. Jenkins' statement and asking you to look at it and see whether it answers the questions that you require in the right detail. There's going to be some things that he can't address, that there needs to be somebody from within the post office who can work with him to deal with those areas. But there's a concern that transaction data hasn't been requested, and that's surprising. Agreed?
Yes.
Mr. Singh?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what it says.
Can we look, please, at poll 302-9369? And if we scroll down, please, your email at 3:39 on the 5th of February. So I'm so sorry. Scroll down a bit further. Thank you. Your email sent by your secretary at 2:53 to John Longman and to Warwick Tatford. Can you see that?
Yes.
Dear John and Warwick, here with statement from Gareth Jenkins, just off the press. Please let me have your comments and whether this is adequate for our purpose, or does it require any additions before being served on the defence?
I mean, it looks like above they identify that only the first point's been addressed, but Jarnail Singh got given the 4 questions, didn't he? So surely he would be able to spot they were missing, but there we go.
And if we just scroll down a bit further, keep going, we can see that you sent them as well, Mr. Longman and Mr. Tatford, Mr. Jones's email that we just looked at. Yes?
Oh, sorry, say again, Mr. Jones's email.
Yeah, you're forwarding to Mr. Tatford and Mr. Longman, Mr. Jones's email. You're giving them the first draft of the Gareth Jenkins statement.
Yes.
And you're also giving them the text of Mr. Jones's statement raising the 4 issues that I mentioned. Yes?
Can you I don't know. I mean, I can't see. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and then if we scroll up, please, and keep going, and if we look at, thank you, there, stop there. Mr. Longman's reply to you, same day at 3:39. He says, Jarnail, points 2 to 4 have not been answered, which I reproduce below. So he's cutting in the request that he, Mr. Longman, had made to Penny Thomas into an email to you and saying Mr. Jenkins hasn't answered them. And we can see them cut in, points 2, 3, and 4. Point 2 is the calendar square bug in Falkirk, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Point 3 is when Gareth completes his statement, could he also mention whether there are any known problems with the Horizon system that Fujitsu are aware of? If none, could this be clarified in the statement? So what Mr. Longman is telling you is that even the watered down request hasn't been addressed by Mr. Jenkins in his draft statement. Agreed?
Yes.
And
then scroll on 4 isn't relevant for our purposes. And if we scroll up, please.
So again, that highlights the problem with having both John Longman and Jarnail Singh kind of dealing with the same thing. I mean, he wasn't copied into the original email with those 4 points, so we might not be aware of them unless he spoke to him. But again, that shows why presumably he should have dealt with it himself. But it does also now give him the opportunity to spot the mistake between the request that Warwick Tatford said they should make and the request that they've actually made to Fujitsu. But I'm guessing as he didn't spot it when it was side by side at the inquiry, then there was probably no chance that he spotted it at the time either.
And again, let's stop there. Mr. Tatford replies to you the next day. Mr. Longman sets out in his email below the extra matters I asked Mr. Jenkins to look at. The areas where Jenkins says for Poll to respond should be deleted. These will lead only to a flood of further disclosure requests. I'm afraid that the Post Office will never respond. But let's see what you did with Mr. Longman's response, FUJ 0012-2729. So if you remember, you received the email at 3:39 from Mr. Longman. You say to Fujitsu, i.e. David Jones and Penny Thomas and Gareth Jenkins, Dear David and Penny, on first glance, points 2 to 4 have not been answered, which I reproduce below. And then you cut in points 2, 3 and 4 from Mr. Longman's email. Do you see that?
Yes.
Please give this matter your urgent attention. Look forward to hearing from you.
Well, to be fair, it didn't even look like he glanced at it. It just looked like he sent it on for someone else to glance on. But, maybe it's just a play on words.
So you were going back to Fujitsu here and saying, we've asked you to mention whether there are any known problems with Horizon of which Fujitsu is aware, and you haven't answered the question. Was that a concern to you?
I don't recall. I mean, I can't give you any reply to that. I obviously considered it at that particular moment in time.
I mean, I'm guessing it wasn't, because the original request for that information didn't come from him. He just seems to be relaying messages between Post Office and Fujitsu here. So I'm not even sure whether he is considering it. I mean, he's saying he is, but is he?
As you know, straight away, I'm trying to put something together because there is time constraints on it. But with these inquiries, with the papers, I haven't had time to, reconsider to the detail you're asking me. So I'm sorry, I can't help you as to what you're asking me, years on. And
what we've seen is a defence disclosure request being sent to prosecution counsel, him advising that a course of action needs to be taken, that course of action being watered down, that being sent to Fujitsu, and Fujitsu not addressing it, and then you writing to them and saying, you've not answered our questions. Agreed?
Yes, that's what, yes.
Again, still at this point, and looking at the issue of your treatment of Mr. Jenkins, in the emails we've seen, you are not seemingly instructing Mr. Jenkins as an expert by reminding him or drawing to his attention of any of the matters that the criminal procedure rules or the common law required. Correct? That's just not a feature of these email exchanges, is it?
No, this is, agreed, yes.
Was it a significant concern to you that Mr. Jenkins had not addressed the issue of whether there were any known problems in the Horizon system?
Again, I can't answer that.
Well, it ought to have been, oughtn't it?
Sorry, I don't know.
You've got a defence expert saying there are problems with the Horizon system. You've asked somebody with expertise within Fujitsu whether there are known problems with the Horizon system, and he hasn't addressed it.
I can't answer that for...
Did that position ever change?
I don't know.
The question that Warwick Tapford had asked, whether in its original form or in its watered-down form, was that ever addressed squarely and head-on by either Fujitsu or Mr. Jenkins?
I can't recall. I can't give you yes or no answer.
Did you press that point? We need an answer, Fujitsu, to this fundamental question.
I don't know. I mean, I haven't read the paper. I mean, the only thing is that what you supplied me in the inquiry papers. Years on, I can't ask. I can't answer that in detail.
Would you have realised that if Fujitsu revealed known problems with the Horizon system, that would be significant information, not only for this prosecution, but for a number of prosecutions?
Of course it would be.
It could bring an end to prosecution.
Yes, it should. But if there's a problem, there's an error, it should bring an end to prosecution. We shouldn't proceed with it.
And so it's a point that needs to be pressed hard, isn't it?
But as I say, I'm not the only lawyer dealing with these cases. And certainly, if I'm aware of something like that, then yes, it should be, yes.